What's unique about Excite is that we are the first and only to date, as far as I'm aware at least, business platform that has been purposely designed and built for connected devices from any industry, for any IoT. Doesn't matter if it's, once again, agriculture, it could be a truck, it could be a computer, and so on. So, we focus on the business challenges and the aspects of these device manufacturers, and we try to solve the challenge, like exactly like you put it up, on how you better monetize your devices, how you build more sustainable customer relationships similar to what we see in SaaS, in software as a service, how you enable these new premium or new innovative business models.
Our guest today is Omer Brookstein, CEO and co-founder of Excite. Excite's full-stack cloud platform, the Excite Device Cloud, enables OEMs to manage the complete lifecycle of their IoT devices and to bring new business models to market. In this talk, we explored how B2B OEMs are introducing subscription-based and other as-a-service business models for solutions that combine hardware, software, and services. We discussed the role of connected device platforms in enabling both technical integration and business model innovation, which tends to be the more significant challenge. And Omer shared several of the most innovative business models that Excite customers are bringing to market today. We also explored the integration of channel partners, suppliers, and other stakeholders in the transformation of a business as it adopts IoT capabilities. If you find these conversations valuable, please leave us a comment and a 5-star review. And if you'd like to share your company's story or recommend a speaker, you can email us at team@iot1.com. Finally, if you have a technology, research, or strategy initiative that you'd like to discuss, please email me directly at erik.walenza@iot1.com. Thank you.
Welcome to the Industrial IoT Spotlight, your number one spot for insight from industrial IoT thought leaders who are transforming businesses today. With your host, Erik Walenza.
Omer, thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you, Erik. It's a pleasure being here.
So, Omer, this is going to be an interesting one for me because I think you have a technology company that is leaning very heavily into business model innovation or helping companies go through business innovation, which is actually a bit more where my core is. So looking forward to understanding, not just on the technical side, but also on the business side, how you think through this set of challenges with your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward. I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation, and exactly as you spot on what you just said. You'll hear in a second, but Excite is a business platform eventually to try to solve a very, very challenging business challenge.
So before we get into the details of what Excite does, I think you also personally have an interesting background. And whenever I'm talking to a CEO and a co-founder, it's interesting to understand, out of all of the things that you could be doing with your life, how did you end up in 2019 co-founding Excite? Can you just walk us through where was the origin story of this company?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for the question. I think it is interesting and relevant. My professional career started sometime in, 2008, when I first relocated from Israel to New York, working for a relatively large hardware manufacturer, device manufacturing company out of New Jersey. I spent about a year there, and then I moved back to Israel to co-found the company's office in Tel Aviv in Israel. I was the CTO, but I also overlooked all the enterprise sales for the company in Israel and some international companies as well. And I did it for about 10 years. And when I decided that it is time for me to move on to a new chapter, I looked at all the things that I've learned at this great company. What was very clear to me at the time was that as a hardware company, there's a very strong financial force that enforce these device manufacturers, these hardware companies, industrial companies, and so on, enforce them to adopt new business models. It became very clear that devices across any industries are being commoditized, prices are going down, and margins are shrinking. So once again, the device manufacturer really has no choice to move to new, let's call it for now, cloud and services kind of business models. And I'll give you some examples as we move on with the conversation that we're all familiar with. So that was, I think, one thing that was very clear to me. The other thing that was very clear is that unlike software companies, device manufacturers, generally speaking, they do a great job at developing cutting edge hardware, and specifically the company I was working for. But developing the kind of software that is needed to power that transformation is simply not their core competency. And it turned out that while in some cases you might think that developing a cloud platform to support your devices is an easy task, you just take some IoT platform, AWS, Azure, others, you connect your devices, but it actually turned out to be a very complex task to do. Once again, they don't have the right core competencies to develop this kind of business platform. So when I first started thinking about the idea behind Excite, and at the time it wasn't even called Excite yet, I understood that these device manufacturers, specifically B2B device manufacturers, they have a relatively complex value chain. They usually work with channel partners. It could be distributors, managed service providers, resellers, value resellers, and so on, selling to the end customers, which makes even all this transformation to subscription and cloud-based business model far more complex. But then I realized that there is a need for an infrastructure layer, some sort at a time, right? Some sort of a business platform more than anything else that will enable and empower these device manufacturers to make this very complex and challenging transformation. And that's really how Excite started. So I think in the early days, we had a very good understanding of the challenge. We had a generally good idea of what the solution should look like. Obviously, it's evolved since significantly, but I think that's really where we came from, and that's what we got us to where we are today.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem space because, of course, you're addressing a lot of technical challenges in terms of enabling new functionality or new ways for customers to access, for end users, let's say, to access your customers' products and services. So there's the set of technical challenges, but then there's also this set of business challenges because you're enabling companies to sell in a different way, to price in a different way. And that means you are disrupting a lot of people in the organization and their roles, right, in the business. And so you have to somehow navigate that as kind of a technology enabler. When you are working with a new company who wants to kind of go on this journey, who are you typically working with? Unlike a lot of technology providers that are focused on efficiency or something, you can't just be working with the technical team. There needs to be a kind of very strong business leadership, I would imagine, with adopting this platform.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with what you said before. There are some technical aspects of the platform that we solve and make it easier for them. But the biggest challenges that we solve for our customers, the device manufacturers, are the business challenges. And because we're solving a business problem than anything else, there are some cases where we start with the product and the technical people and show them how easily and quickly they can get to the cloud. But even in these cases, in most of those cases, very quickly, it's the business people that comes in. Now, in some cases, there will be a CEO for a small or medium-sized company. In some other cases, there will be a VP or a GM for very large enterprises that are using our platform, or maybe a business development, sales, marketing executives, and so on. But I think one of the unique things about Excite, and there are a few unique things that we can discuss later on, but one of the unique things is, like you said, the platform touches so many different people in the organization. So actually, it became so incredibly rich with features that we actually restructured our platform recently to have 6 modules, 6 hubs. And that starts to look a lot like, if you're familiar with other business platforms such as Salesforce, ServiceNow, HubSpot, and others, where we have a dedicated area for the product and tech people. We have a dedicated module in our platform for the sales and commerce people. We have a dedicated section of our platform for the support and operation, finance, and so on people in the organization. So to me, yeah, it makes it more complex sell in many cases, but it also makes it into a much, much more exciting opportunity, I think, for me as a founder, but also for our customers, because we're really changing the way they do business and enabling them so many new capabilities that until recently they could really only dream of because it was just beyond their reach.
Maybe you can walk us through what would this look like for, and let's choose a larger company, because I feel like with a smaller company where the CEO and maybe a small group of people can set a chart of direction and they can get everybody to adopt this and potentially be using all of those modules from the beginning. With a larger company, I would imagine that you might be starting with a product category, and it might take a while to get finance on board. It might take a while to get other functions. on board. Maybe I'm wrong in that assumption, but walk us through, what would it look like for a larger company to adopt the platform and to begin going through this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'll take even one step backward. I believe that it will be very difficult for large companies, very large enterprises, to show interest and start working with Excite. I just thought it's going to be too hard to transform these companies. And we initially targeted mid-market customers for this reason. But what we found out very quickly is that we get more and more interest and attention from some of the largest Fortune 500 companies out there in the Excite platform. And one unique thing about them compared to once again, the mid-market, and then I'll get to your question in a second, Eric, is that with mid-market customers, their number one priority was always to first get their devices to the cloud and launch what we support them to do, like an asset management, branded asset management solution for their customers. But when we started to get interest from, once again, those large enterprises, it was never about that. And the reason behind that is that these large enterprises, I always say, they already hired McKinsey & Co. or Deloitte or some other consulting agencies, and they already looked at what other device manufacturers, you can name a few, Kodak in the city machines, and John Deere in the agriculture, and obviously Apple in the PC and mobile phones and so on, what these device manufacturers do and how they adopt more subscription-based business models. And then these larger device manufacturers, when they came to us, well, they still have to catch up very, very quickly. So when they came to us, it was usually the business owner, as you mentioned before, and their number one priority was to move to a subscription. Now, you're absolutely right that selling to such large enterprises, first of all, every sale is unique. No sale is like other sale. There's no one framework that works exactly the same way for all of those. But in most cases, and we have a very good example we're working on now, you do start with one business unit, or you do start with one product line and one team. With a platform like Excite, there's such a high trust factor that is needed from this device manufacturer that it's only natural for them to want to first kind of try out the water and see how that partnership is going on before they expand to additional brands and additional product lines and so on. And we're perfectly okay with that. And that's how we start with them. And what I tell my customers and our account executive and our entire sales team tell our customers all the time is that we're building a relationship. And this is a long-term relationship. We actually don't call them customers internally, and even the interface. They are our partners. And we work with them because we understand it's something that's going to be over years. And we understand that they might ask for new things that they like to see that we don't have today. It is important for us as a early stage and fast-growing startup company to get this feedback from them and keep developing our platform. So this is great for us as well. But more importantly, it is for them to build that kind of relationship and partnership with them. So yes, it starts usually, your question, with the business owner. They usually start to ask us about the business models. They try out the platform. They see how easy it is for them. And they get back to us and they tell us, look, if we had to build something like that, that would probably take us 5-6 years and several millions of dollars or euros based on the geographic. And with Excite, we can start tomorrow. And in fact, in some cases, they already tried building that. And when they get to us, and look, we tried to build that, and we know what it takes, and we understand it's not something that, even if we can, it's not something that makes sense for us to build in-house. It's an infrastructure. And then we just start working with them, and we dedicated a team, an executive team from the sales team and our customer success team as well. We meet with them regularly. If they sign up to one of our premium or enterprise tier, being a large customers, they have a word in helping us prioritizing our roadmap as well. And we are very, very open with them, obviously under NDA about the new features that are coming. And we look forward for their feedback and comments. And so far, knock on wood, those customers have really been our best partners, and we're very fortunate to work with them. They're usually more kind of forward-thinking device manufacturers. They understand they have to change. They understand it's a challenge. And we really, to be perfectly honest, we very happy and appreciate the trust they put in us.
Okay. Well, that's interesting that the multinationals have this other perspective, right? Which, as you explained it makes sense, right? That they've already reached a certain point in terms of technical readiness, but then they have maybe a higher level of complexity on the business side, and that's where they need additional support. You've called this a connected device platform. I guess there's a lot of different kind of platform configurations. There's things like ThingWorks and so forth, which maybe also have some of the the similar technical connectivity. And you're extending this more into the enterprise software, right? So it's now enabling more business model innovation. Can you help us understand some of the types of business model innovation that you've seen coming out of this? Because I guess a lot of our listeners will be quite comfortable with the concept of a connected device platform, or the idea of how to get an IoT device on the cloud and start to manage it. I think the business model is quite interesting, because that's an area where there's a lot less transparency in terms of what works and what doesn't work, right? I mean, you can typically see, here's the roadmap to get it, to manage a device. What is the roadmap to monetize that product? That's much more difficult to determine. So what are some of the more interesting business models that you've seen come out of your partners in the past years?
I would say, not to undervalue any of the other IoT platforms, but I think at the time when I and my co-founder, when we founded the company, I did not want to start an IoT company. I strongly believe that the technical aspects of connecting millions of devices to the cloud, showing some dashboards, analytics, some alerts, and so on, it's not a technical challenge that a startup, it's interesting for a startup to deal with, even five years ago. AWS and Azure will always probably do it better than I do. And Excite does. And I think what's unique about Excite is that we are the first and only to date, as far as I'm aware at least, business platform that has been purposely designed and built for connected devices from any industry, for any IoT. It doesn't matter if it's, once again, agriculture, it could be a truck, it could be a computer, and so on. So, we focus on the business challenges and the aspects of these device manufacturers, and we try to solve the challenge, exactly like you put it out, on how you better monetize your devices, how you build more sustainable customer relationships similar to what we see in SaaS, in software as a service, how you enable these new premium or new innovative business models. And when we started with this, so initially it was, we simplified that. And the first pitch to investors, this is the hardware as a service platform. We quickly realized that hardware as a service is not a good term for many reasons. And we expanded that into an Excite device cloud, because once again, that looks at your devices 360 and your connected device business 360. It's a collaborative platform. How do you work with your system integrators, value resellers, and so on? But to your question about the business model, maybe before I'll get to what kind of business model we see from them, and that is fascinating, I agree. I think it's also interesting to discuss in just one line our business model, because being once again a business platform and not an IoT platform, we don't actually charge by number of devices. In fact, we encourage our device manufacturers, once again, unlike any other IoT platform pretty much out there, we encourage them to connect their entire fleet of devices to the cloud so they can have full visibility to their devices and how they're being used, so they can better understand what kind of feature they need to develop for the next product, and so on. And then once they connect their full devices or the full fleet of devices to the cloud, as you mentioned, we enable them to very, very easily and quickly innovate on their business models. What we see is pretty much all the way from one-time fee, and then starting selling complementary features. And I'm going to use the Tesla, which I believe most of the listeners are familiar with, as a great example, because we enable them to Tesla-size their business, right? So when you buy a Tesla, the first thing you can buy, at least here in the US, you can buy insurance. So that's a complimentary service. So you buy the Tesla for one-time fee, and then Tesla sells you an additional service on top of that directly from their mobile app. So we enable that with every device manufacturer is working with Excite. And then the next thing is usually a premium feature. And that very similar to the Tesla full self-driving, right? So I bought a car, but now I want to enable some sort of a software feature that is there in the hardware, but it's behind the payment wall. I need to buy an additional license and entitle that license to that specific device. And we enable these device manufacturers to do that. Now, the exact pricing is completely up to them. They can charge a one-time fee. They can charge a monthly or an annual fee. Or what they can do, that's get even more interesting, they can charge a usage-based fee, which become more and more popular in SaaS applications as well. And that is slightly more advanced business model, but the best example is one of our customers, a truck manufacturer. And as a premier truck manufacturer brand, their trucks are, generally speaking, they're more expensive than competition. And they find it very hard to penetrate very price-sensitive markets. And what Excite enabled them to do, and will enable them to do, is to essentially sell their truck for a fixed monthly fee plus a usage-based component based on miles or kilometers that the truck has been used. Now, you can take this example to pretty much anything else. It can be number of hours you use the phone or a PC. It can be, how much data you consume if it's a device with a cellular application on it, and so on. So that usage base is really the most innovative kind of business model. Maybe one comment that I think is important on the premium feature enablement, such as the full self-driving of Tesla. What's great about that is that it not only enables the device manufacturers to sell after, post-sale additional services and so on to the customers and aftermarket sales, but actually have a significant impact in many cases on their warehouse and inventory complexity. Because what many device manufacturers have today is few different SKUs that are almost identical with just a minor premium feature in one or two of them. And what we enable them to do, and we have already a few examples of customers doing that, to limit those SKUs into a single SKU that you can then basically field upgradable. You can add additional fields remotely to the cloud. So I think this is where we started the basic. What we're starting to see now is more requests coming from customers for additional cloud premium features. So even selling more storage for their customers on our cloud platform, selling some special secure tunneling access to the devices remotely. So we enable them to do all of that, and we keep adding more capabilities and features. But I think those are the generally speaking, those are the kind of business model that we see. And I think the usage-based one is the most innovative one, and it will take some time for that to be broadly adopted, but that's definitely the direction.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting case. I'm sitting here in China, and I'm sure you're very aware that China is now producing a lot of goods that are competing with American and European industrial equipment and industrial products. And often what I see the European and American companies struggling with is exactly this proposition, right? Which is our asset has a useful life of 20 years, and it has lower maintenance costs and lower downtime, et cetera, but it costs significantly more. Competing product has a useful life of 8 years, going to be some maintenance issues, et cetera. But if you're just looking at it from CapEx perspective, a lot of buyers are going to go with the lower cost product because that's kind of the CapEx budget that they have available right now. And so if you can shift that to this OpEx model, the asset that has a longer lifetime might actually look like a better value proposition there. And then, of course, if they only need it for 5 years or for 10 years, I guess you have either the OEM or some third party who could reclaim that asset, that equipment, and then relicense it or rent it out to another user, right? So I think that's something that a lot of companies will have to consider simply because they're going to be competing against a lot of very competitively priced Chinese products, and they need to figure out how to not just differentiate on the feature set, but also differentiate on the the pricing.
Absolutely. And actually, now that you bring it up, we have an exact case like that. It's a US-based company. They make some sort of a very high-end robotics. And what happened during COVID is that they start seeing growing competition, exactly like I said, from a Chinese manufacturer that sells for about 60% less, right? Not as good robot, not as reliable robot, but they sell way more. The other challenge that we start seeing, and in that case and other cases, is that more of these device manufacturers are starting being a B2B, in many, not even just B2B, but most of the device manufacturers that used to sell or still selling through channel partners, distributors, resellers, and so on, which obviously makes their product MSRP, the final price for the customers, higher. They're starting to see competition selling just online, direct to the customer, direct to consumer. And that obviously affects, once again, the price. So they have to compete with that as well. And we see some cases where they say, on one hand, we need our channel partners and we're definitely going to cut them. But on the other hand, we have to find a way to compete with what's happening in the market. and they have to move to more, just call it, online or e-commerce kind of sales as well. And this, with the competition from China and so on, and new players disrupting the market, is a great challenge for these device manufacturers.
If you're still listening, then you must take technology seriously. So I'd like to introduce you to our case study database. Think of it as a roadmap that can help you understand which use cases and technologies are being deployed in the world today. We have cataloged more than 9,000 case studies and are adding 500 per month with detailed tagging by industry and function. Our goal is to help you make better investment decisions that are backed by data. Check it out at the link below, and please share your thoughts. We'd love to hear how we can improve it. Thank you, and back to the show.
Omer, I'm curious if you have experience working with distributors, because there's certainly this strong value proposition for the OEM. A lot of OEMs are trying to reclaim some kind of ownership of their sales channels from distributors. On the other hand, I think there's potential room for distributors to leverage platforms like this, because they can distribute a wider array of equipment, but then maybe they have trouble kind of controlling the software, right, in that equipment, but they can distribute a wider array. And there's potentially a kind of a financial role for them to play, right? So the OEM might not want to finance in this kind of OpEx model. They might not want to finance the ownership of the asset. So if there's a distributor backed by a PE firm that can say, okay, we're going to buy a bunch of equipment, and then we'll finance the ownership and we'll license it out. That might be, kind of an investment model that would appeal to them more than it would to an OEM. But what have you seen in terms of distributors trying to react to this change in terms of how assets are managed and sold?
That's one of my favorite questions. I used to get a lot of questions about that from potential investors in the company. And I guess there's a few ways to answer that. First of all, I do strongly believe that channel partners will play a very important role in this transformation. There's no way to sell a complex piece of hardware, and our customers are usually not, just consumer-based product that you install on your phone. They require professional installers and distributors, and they're mostly, or in many cases, part of an integrated solution and so on. So those distributors, value-added resellers, and so on, they have a very important role. However, I also strongly believe, and we can take an analogy from the software world in a second, that they must transform as well. And one of the greatest things about Excite, and going back to your question before about the large enterprises, what gets them very excited about Excite is that when they work with Excite, they're not only enabling new revenue streams for themselves, for the device manufacturers, but they actually enable their channel partners to develop their own recurring revenue and transition to be more of an MSP, a managed service provider in the value chain. And one of the unique things about Excite, and from day one when we started developing the platform, is that it is not a siloed solution, meaning that there's not one instant of Excite that we sell, to a specific device manufacturer, and then a specific silo of Excite solution that we sell to another device manufacturer, another distro, and so on. Excite is a collaborative platform. And we enable the device manufacturers to invite, connect, and collaborate with their disties and their resellers. And when they invite and connect with them, then they can start and collaborate on many things. They can start and collaborate on support tickets. They can start and share catalogs. And exactly like you mentioned, one of the biggest benefits, other than financial, which is huge, and also in many cases, device manufacturers doesn't want to have device on a service on their documents, so it's easier for them to have a distro that is just a better fit for that. But other than financial, this is, I believe, must transition to be, from only box movers in some cases to add value and transition to become some sort of managed service providers. And if you look at what happened in the software world, then it's hard to believe, but I think less than 15 years ago, we all used to go to the store down the street and buy Adobe or Microsoft Office on a CD. So that was a reseller of Microsoft Office and Exchange and so on. And those resellers, one of two things happened with them. Either they went out of business or they transitioned as well to be, a Microsoft Office 365 or a Google G Suite implementation companies and support companies and so on. And the same thing will happen here. Yes, there's still hardware. You still have to distribute it, but you have to find ways to add more services. And this can be financial services. This can be remote support and managed services and so on. And once again, I think that's what makes Excite so interesting to those device manufacturers that are custom and used to sell, not direct, and they don't have the operational to support direct sales, but they used to sell through channel partners. And that's how they can work together with them and also, make sure they see business in that and they see opportunity in that as well.
Interesting. Let's come back to this topic of your business model because, it's quite complex, right? So you've already mentioned that you don't sell by number of devices. You now have these other stakeholders, these channel partners that might be also coming on board the platform. So you have also users from multiple enterprises that could be using the platform. You have 6 modules. Do you have a standard approach to how you structure that? Because I guess it's actually, I don't know, there's a lot of room for innovation there. And it's also somewhat hard, I think, with these types of platforms to find one model that makes sense for every type of customer, given the many various ways in which they could be using this and the different levels of scale. So how do you actually define your business model for your partners?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of one of the biggest challenges of Excite, being a completely agnostic solution to the industry, the device, but also kind of agnostic to the stakeholder and the user is definitely a challenge. And finding the right business is something that, we constantly evolving and updating. Once again, listening to our customers. And we have a very open conversation with them in many cases and, understand the value they see, how much, they're willing to pay and how they like to pay and so on, especially with the early adopters and our early customers. But I actually think that, and we'll announce it officially October 1st, but I actually think that the new modular approach makes it easier. And we did it because of all those reasons that you've mentioned, that we support a small company, a medium company, and a very large enterprise. And we sell to the device manufacturer, we sell to their channel partners and so on. And the reason why it makes it easier is that because it's almost like a Lego kit now. And you can custom and build exactly the modules that you need. So I'll maybe give you an example. If I'm a system integrator and I'm installing a system of an Excite supported device manufacturer, and I just need to remotely support these devices for some of my customers. Let's say I have 2 support people in my team, then I just buy 2 support seats for a support model, for a support hub. And that will be about $200 a month, and that's it. And I can support these devices. I'm not connecting any device to the cloud. There's no reason for me to pay a lot of money, significantly more money to connect plenty of devices. I also don't necessarily need my own branded commerce because I'm not ready to sell any kind of services. But on the other hand, if I'm a device manufacturer and I do want to connect my devices to the cloud and I want to launch my branded version of Excite, then I'll subscribe to the product hub. And I'll be able to connect unlimited number of devices. We have 4 different tiers based on the security level that you need, the support level that you need, but all of them enable you to connect unlimited number of devices and invite unlimited number of end customers to your cloud. So I'll subscribe to the product tab and I'll start connecting my devices and I'll launch my asset management, my brand asset management platform to my customers. And then if I'm, in some cases, I'll have to support my customers directly as well, then I can subscribe to the support centers seats exactly like my system integrator is doing. And when I'm ready to start and sell subscription, then I'll add the component or the module of the Commerce Hub. And using the Commerce Hub, I can start selling different types of cloud-based and subscription-based products to my customers. And that's where Excite charge a small monthly fee, and a percentage of whatever you sell, very similar to Shopify and other commerce platforms. So based on the GMV, based on how much I'm selling to Excite, and as more I sell, obviously the percentage goes down, but the overall payment I'll make to Excite will be higher. So it's a usage-based model. But that kind of modularity really makes it easier for us to find the right kind of bundle, I would say, to each of these customers. But the bottom line is that is a framework, because when we find a customer, that happens especially with once again with startup companies, and especially with a complex platform like we have. When we find a customer, that has some unique needs, and you say, this is too much for me. However, I'd like to do that. And so we always get into a conversation with him, and we always, hear them out. And in, I would say, 9 out of 10 cases, we find something that will justify their need. And if that's a good idea, we actually edit, adapt, change our pricing as well for other customers. But that, to me, is the best way to find the right balance between, charging what we believe the value is, because eventually we need to grow and we need to raise more funds and build a company, but also deliver the best value to our customers. And it goes back, I think, to the partnership discussion we had before. We see that as a long-term partnership. So we're not looking to squeeze as much revenue out of you as soon as we work together, but actually we're way more interested to see how much value we can give to you. And, I guess for lack of a better term, what will be a fair price for us to work with together.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, I think that's one of the more interesting things about any type of kind of IoT platform business model is that not necessarily that it's easy, but you're able to build relationships where you can map financial flows more closely to the flow of value, right? And you have a degree of visibility into the flow of value, right? That you really lack in a traditional business. So I think it's a fascinating part of the business. Omer, last question, and there might be some other things that you'd like to discuss, but last question from my side is your future roadmap. I think you're going into maybe year 5 now. You already have a good established business. I'm sure that you have a heavy roadmap taking you into the next 12, 24 months. So what are some of the things that you can already announce about projects that you're planning to launch in the near future?
Yeah, I think the hardest part, probably about every software company, but specifically in our case, is prioritizing, because the opportunities out there are just enormous. They're unlimited, right? But for the next 12 to 18 months, some of the biggest things that are coming out in the near term, actually in a couple of weeks, we're announcing and releasing a new version or a new iteration of our collaboration capabilities. So once again, the platform will just be more collaborative, enable new and more innovative ways for end customers to collaborate with their channel partners, with their device manufacturers, to collaborate with their system integrators, managed service providers, and so on. I think that's that's one thing that's coming in the near term. Another exciting thing that's coming in the next couple of quarters is more, I would say just call it more openness. We call it universal gateway. But generally, we understand as an infrastructure, we will never be able, and it's not our goal, to develop custom application layers. So, if you make trucks, you can benefit a lot from Excite, but there's probably some unique fleet management for trucks application that you'll need to use. And if you're a display or a digital signage company, there's some content management system that you need to integrate with. In the DNA of a company, that we believe that our customers and their customers should have the option to choose and should be able to integrate and connect their devices to Excite to any other third platform. So one of the things that we do is we're working on opening more and more APIs and more capabilities to integrate with third-party applications next on top with the Excite platform. So that's coming as well. Additional thing will be on the commerce side. So there's constantly new capabilities, and that related to the collaboration of, and you briefly mentioned that, Eric, before, is, this is my product, and some of them I'd like to sell maybe directly. Some others I'd like to sell through system integrators and resellers. Some others I'd like to share online with my distributor, and maybe that distributor will bundle them with some other products and sell a bundle with their services and so on. So all the, what we call, catalog sharing and some very advanced new capabilities to the commerce will be added in 2025 as well. I think those are the main items. And obviously, being a SaaS company, there's constant innovation all the time. We just dramatically upgraded our user experience to the customers, and we already see a higher adoption and higher engagement from our customers and their customers. So this is great. So there's constant thing coming all the time, but I think those three main things will working on and investing a lot of resourcing in adding in end of 2024 and I would say the first 2 quarters of 2025.
Awesome. Omer, sounds like you will be busy. Your engineering team will be busy.
Yeah.
What is the best way for our listeners to reach out to you if they want to follow up on this conversation?
So I think I'm very accessible, and I'm always happy to talk to IoT fans and any device manufacturer. The best way, I guess, is through my email, omer@excite.io. That is omer@excite.io, or directly through my LinkedIn. And I'm always happy to pick people ideas, get their feedback, show them a quick demo, and always happy to talk.
Great. Omer, thanks so much for making time to join us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Eric, for having me. It was absolutely a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Industrial IoT Spotlight. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at IoT1HQ and to check out our database of case studies on IoT1.com. If you have unique insight or a project deployment story to share, we'd love to feature you on a future edition. Write us at eric.walenza@iot1.com.